to cultivate to achieve a peaceful and concentrated mind. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Human's mind is a distracted or unsettled mind, or wandering mind. Mind only good at intervals and always follows sensual desires. Someone asks a Zen master on how to look into one's self-nature. The Zen master replies, "How can? For if there is a cage with 6 windows, in which there is a monkey. Someone calls at one window, 'Oh monkey,' and he replies. Someone else calls at another window, and again he replies, and so on. Human's mind is no different from that monkey. Through Zen, we can attain a fixed or settled mind. The mind of a cultivator must be pure. Do not long for foreknowledge of events. To have this kind of foreknowledge is, in fact, nothing but a lot of trouble, because it leads to discrimination in our thinking and prevents us from being able to concentrate. Being unable to concentrate or focus our energy on cultivation, our idle thoughts run wild, then afflictions come in droves, herds. If we do not crave this foreknowledge in the first place, then we also will not have afflictions, and we are free of impediments. According to the Heart Sutra, the Buddha taught, because there is no impediment, he leaves distorted dream thinking far behind. Ultimately, nirvana. This, then, should be the mind of a cultivator. First, mind is a troublesome objective for practitioners, mental intelligence or spirit of mind. Whether something objective is troublesome or not often depends on the state of mind rather than the object itself. If we think that it is trouble, then it is trouble. If we do not think that it is trouble, then it is not trouble. Everything depends on the mind. For example, sometimes during meditation, we are interrupted by outside noises. If we dwell on them and cling to them, they will disturb our meditation. But if we dismiss them from our minds as soon as they arise, then they will not cause a disturbance. If we are always demanding something out of our life, then we will never be content. But if we accept life as it is, then we know contentment. Some people seek happiness through material things. Other people can be happy without many material things. Why? Because happiness is also a state of mind, not a quantitative measure of possessions. If we are satisfied with what we are and have now, then we are happy. But if we are not satisfied with what we are and have now, that is where unhappiness dwells. The desire is bottomless, because no matter how much is put into it, it can never be filled up. It always remains empty. The sutra in 42 chapters taught, though a person filled with desires dwells in heaven, still that is not enough for him. Though a person who has ended desire dwells on the ground, still he is happy. Second, you cannot run away from your mind. According to Bhikkhu Piyananda, in the Gems of Buddhism Wisdom, you cannot run away from your mind. By meditation, you can train the mind to keep calm and be free from disturbances either from within or outside. Apply concentrated awareness to the internal confusions and mental conflicts, and observe or pay attention to all the changing states of your mind. When the mind is properly developed, it brings happiness and bliss. If the mind is neglected, it runs you into endless troubles and difficulties. The disciplined mind is strong and effective, while the wavering mind is weak and ineffective. The wise train their minds as thoroughly as a horse trainer trains their horses. Therefore, you should watch your mind. In a ceaselessly inner struggle, Buddhist practitioners should always remember the followings. First, the duty of meditation is to observe the changing states in mind, not to fight with the mind. When you sit alone, you should observe the changing conditions of the mind. The task is only a matter of observing the changing states, not fighting with the mind, or avoid it, or try to control it. When the mind is in a state of lust, be aware that we are having a mind of lust. When the mind is in a state of hatred, or when it is free from hatred, be aware that we are having a mind of hatred, or free from hatred. When you have the concentrated mind or the scattered mind, you should be aware that we are having a concentrated or a scattered mind. You should always remember that your job is to observe all these changing conditions without identifying yourself with them. Your job is to turn your attention away from the outside world and focus in yourself. This is very difficult, but it can be done. Second, we should always watch our mind in daily life. To observe your mind in all kinds of situations. To observe the working of your mind without identifying with or finding justification for your thoughts, without erecting the screen of prejudice, without expecting reward or satisfaction. to observe the senses of desire, hatred, jealousy, and other unwholesome states that arise and upset the balance of the mind. Continue meditation practices to check and eliminate these harmful elements. Third, once we have the fixed mind, we can go to the noisy market at ease. It is very important for us to fix our own mind. Zen practitioners should always remember that the more we want enlightenment, the further away it will be. If we define a good place to practice Zen, no place we find will be good enough. However, if we cut off all thinking and return to beginner's mind, that itself will be enlightenment. If we keep true empty mind, then any place we are is nirvana. So we must strongly keep a closed mouth, not to talk in place of practicing. We must learn directly from the blue sky, the white clouds, the deep quiet mountains, and the noisy marketplaces. They are just like this. That is our true great teacher. We hope to kill our strong self first in this inner struggle in order to have a clear mind all the time. The concept and powers of mind in Buddhist point of view. The concept of mind in Buddhist point of view. Chitta is a Sanskrit term, temporarily considering and recognizing mind, thought, mental, or intellectual consciousness. The mind that is attending, observing, reflecting, imagining, thought, intention, aim, wish, memory, intelligence, reason. Consciousness or mind, this is consciousness itself. It naturally functions in 5 ways corresponding to the 5 sense organs. Citta refers to mental processes in general and is commonly said in Indian texts to be synonymous with manas, sentience, and vijnana, consciousness. In Tibetan Buddhist epistemology, it is said to refer to a main mind, which is accompanied by mental factors. The definition of mind varies with different people in different cultures. If you ask an ordinary Vietnamese where his mind is, and chances are he will point to his heart or chest. However, when you ask the same question of a Westerner and he will indicate his head. According to the Buddha, mind, or heart as the seat of thought or intelligence, or mental factors, is defined as clarity and knowing. It is formless, which no one can see it. However, it is our mind which has created the actions which cause us to experience suffering and to be born in cyclic existence or samsara. All our physical, verbal, and mental actions depend on our mind. The function of the mind is to perceive, to apprehend, and to know its objects. It discerns and discriminates between forms, qualities, aspects, and so forth. The only way to reach Buddhahood is by training in the control and transformation of our mind until we are completely free from all obscurations and defilements. In English, mind means heart, spirit, psyche, or soul. Mind with a small m means the seat of the intellect. Mind with a capital M stands for absolute reality. From the standpoint of Zen experience, mind means total awareness. In other words, just listening when hearing. In Zen, the moon is a symbol of the mind. The mind is just like the moon shining bright and helping us see all things. But the mind is not a thing we can point at. The mind has neither shadow nor shape. Existence is the mind manifesting. Its true nature is the emptiness. We can hear the sound of a pebble hitting the surface of a road. The sound is the mind manifesting. We can see a banner waving in the wind. The flapping is the mind manifesting. That's all. According to Buddhism, Citta or the mind is the root of all dharmas. The intent is the discriminating mind, the 6th consciousness. Not only does the mind make discriminations, it is filled with idle thoughts. The 6 consciousnesses can also be said to be a perceptive nature. That is, from the 6 sense organs, eyes, ears, tongue, body, and mind, the functions of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and knowing arise. When people commit offenses, they do it with the 6 sense organs. When they cultivate, they also do it with the 6 sense organs. If you can remain unperturbed by external states, then you are cultivating. If you are turned by external states, then you will fall. In Contemplation of the Mind Sutra, the Buddha taught, "All my tenets are based on the mind that is the source of all dharmas." The mind has brought about the Buddhas, the heaven, or the hell. It is the main driving force that makes us happy or sorrowful, cheerful or sad, liberated or doomed. There are several Sanskrit and Pali terms for mind such as mana, citta, vijnana, and vinana. Mind is another name for alaya vijnana. Unlike the material body, immaterial mind is invisible. We are aware of our thoughts and feelings and so forth by direct sensation, and we infer their existence in others by analogy. According to most Venerable Dhammananda in the Gems of Buddhist Wisdom, mind may be defined as simply the awareness of an object, since there is no agent or a soul that directs all activities. It consists of fleeting mental states which constantly arise and perish with lightning rapidity. With birth for its source and death for its mouth, it persistently flows on like a river, receiving from the tributary streams of sense constant accretions to its flood. Each momentary consciousness of this ever-changing life stream, on passing away, transmits its whole energy, all the indelibly recorded impressions, to its successor. Every fresh consciousness, therefore, consists of the potentialities of its predecessors, and something more. As all impressions are indelibly recorded in this ever-changing palimpsest-like mind, and as all potentialities are transmitted from life to life, irrespective of temporary physical disintegrations, reminiscence of past births or past incidents become a possibility. Mind is like a double-edged weapon that can equally be used either for good or evil. One single thought that arises in this invisible mind can even save or destroy the world. One such thought can either populate or depopulate a whole country. It is mind that creates one's paradise and one's hell. Citta, or the mind, is also defined as the whole system of vijnanas, originally pure, or mind. Citta is generally translated as thought. In the Lankavatara Sutra as well as in other Mahayana sutras, citta may better be rendered mind, when it is defined as accumulation or as storehouse, where karma seeds are deposited. It is not mere thought, it has an ontological signification also. In the Dhammapada Sutta, the Buddha taught, "Mind foreruns deeds, mind is chief, and mind-made are they." In Buddhism, there is no distinction between mind and consciousness. Both are used as synonymous terms. According to Great Master Yin Kuan, the mind encompasses all the 10 directions of Dharma realms, including Buddha Dharma realm, Bodhisattva Dharma realm, Pratyeka Buddha Dharma realm, Shravaka Dharma realm, Heaven Dharma realm, Human Dharma realm, Asura Dharma realm, Animal Dharma realm, Hungry Ghost Dharma realm, and Hell Dharma realm. One mind can give rise to everything. Buddhas arise from within the cultivator's mind. Hells also arise from the cultivator's mind. The mind is so closely linked with the body that mental states affect the body's health and well-being. Some doctors even confirm that there is no such thing as a purely physical disease. Unless these bad mental states are caused by previous evil acts, and they are unalterable, it is possible so to change them as to cause mental health and physical well-being to follow thereafter. Man's mind influences his body profoundly. If allowed to function viciously and entertain unwholesome thoughts, mind can cause disaster, can even kill a being, but it can also cure a sick body. When mind is concentrated on right thoughts with right effort and understanding, the effect it can produce is immense. A mind with pure and wholesome thoughts really does lead to a healthy and relaxed life. According to Buddhism, mind is the thinking consciousness that coordinates the perceptions of the sense organs, a mind which does not depend on any of the 5 sense faculties, but on the immediately preceding continuum of mind. Mental consciousness apprehends not only objects, form, sound, taste, smell, touch, in the present time, but it also apprehends objects in the past and imagines objects even in the future. Mental consciousness will go with us from one life to another, while the first 5 consciousnesses are our temporary minds. Consciousness is also one of the 5 skandhas. The function of manovijnana is by hypothesis to reflect on manas, as the eye vijnana reflects on the world of forms and the ear vijnana on that of sounds. But in fact, as soon as manas evolves the dualism of subject and object out of the absolute unity of the alaya, manovijnana, and indeed all the other vijnanas, begin to operate. Thus, in the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha said, Buddhist nirvana consists in turning away from the wrongfully discriminating manovijnana. For with manovijnana as cause hetu and support alambana, there takes place the evolution of the 7 vijnanas. Further, when manovijnana discerns and clings to an external world of particulars, all kinds of habit energy vasana are generated therefrom, and by them the alaya is nurtured. Together with the thought of me and mine, taking hold of it and clinging to it and reflecting upon it, manas thereby takes shape and is evolved. In substance, sarira, however, manas and manovijnana are not different the one from the other. They depend upon the alaya as cause and support. And when an external world is tenaciously held as real, which is no other than the presentation of one's own mind, the mentation system, Siddhakalapa, mutually related, is evolved in its totality. Like the ocean waves, the vijnana set in motion by the wind of an external world, which is the manifestation of one's own mind, rise and cease. Therefore, the 7 vijnanas cease with the cessation of manovijnana. It should be noticed that a mind of awareness simply means being conscious of, or remembering, or becoming acquainted with. But we must use it in the sense of being in the process of being conscious of, or being in the process of remembering. We have learned the word awareness in the sense of recognition or bare attention, but the meaning doesn't stop there. In awareness, there are also the elements of concentration, samadhi, and understanding, prajna. Concentration and understanding together are meditate on the absence of identity of all things. According to the Satipatthana Sutta, practitioner should contemplate the body in the body, contemplate the feelings in the feelings, contemplate the mind in the mind, contemplate the objects of mind in the objects of mind. This means that practitioner must live in the body in full awareness of it, and not just study like a separate object. Live in awareness with feelings, mind, and objects of mind. Do not just study them. When we meditate on our body, we live with it as truth and give it our most lucid attention. We become one with it. The flower blossoms because sunlight touches and warms its bud, becoming one with it. Meditation reveals not a concept of truth, but a direct view of truth itself. This we call insight, the kind of understanding based on attention and concentration. Buddhist practitioners should always remember that in cultivation of the mind is the most difficult because everything comes to the mind, from the eyes, ears, noses, tongue, and body. They all receive sensations and send them to the mind for needed actions. Mind is the boss of all organs in our system of body-mind. Buddhist practitioners should also always remember that if we want to have a life with more peace, mindfulness, and happiness, and a cultivation that is leading to emancipation, like or dislike, we have no other choice but taming our mind. We must always be mindful at all times, whether walking, standing, reclining, or sitting. This means that while walking we have mindfulness, while standing we have mindfulness, while reclining we have mindfulness, while sitting we have mindfulness. In other words, we must put awareness into our walking, standing, reclining, and sitting at all times and under all circumstances. Let's look inside ourselves to see that the mind has no form at all. The image comes and goes. The mind sees the image coming and going. The sound comes and goes. The mind hears the sound coming and going. Because the mind is formless, it can reflect all things coming and going in countless forms. Also, because it is formless, the mind could manifest as the image we see and as the sound we hear. Practitioners should see that they are all states of mind only. Let's look at our mind to see that thoughts coming and going, arising and vanishing. The mind is just like a mirror that shows us the images of all things reflected. All images come and go, but the reflectivity is still there, unmoving and undying. In ancient times, the reason Zen patriarchs awoke their disciples by clapping 2 hands, for when 2 hands clap they cause a sound. The sound comes and goes, but the nature of hearing ability is still there even in our sleep, unchanging, unmoving, and undying. Devout Buddhists should always remember that clear mind is like the full moon in the sky. Sometimes clouds come and cover it, but the moon is always behind them. Clouds go away, then the moon shines brightly. So, devout Buddhists should not worry about clear mind. It is always there. Remember, when thinking comes, behind it is clear mind. When thinking goes, there is only clear mind. Thinking comes and goes without any exceptions. We must not be attached to the coming or the going of the thinking. We live together and act together in harmonious spirit. Acting together means cutting off my opinions, cutting off my condition, cutting off my situation. To be able to do this, our mind will naturally become empty mind. When our mind becomes empty mind, it is like a white paper. Then our true opinion, our true condition, our true situation will appear. In our daily cultivation, when we bow together and chant together, recite Buddha names together and eat together, our minds become one mind. It is like on the sea. When the wind comes, naturally there are many waves. When the wind dies down, the waves become smaller. When the wind stops, The water becomes a mirror, in which everything is reflected, mountains, trees, clouds, etc. Our mind is the same. When we have many desires and many opinions, there are many big waves. But after we sit in meditation and act together for some time, our opinions and desires disappear. The waves become smaller and smaller. Then our mind is like a clear mirror, and everything we see or hear or smell or taste or touch or think is the truth. Practitioners should always be mindful that our body is changing and our mind is wandering east and west. Let's keep practicing until we can realize that our mind is originally serene like the nature of the water. Serene, unchanging and unmoving, despite the waves rising and falling, and despite the bubbles forming and popping. Practitioners should see our mind just like an ox. Meditation is like taming an ox, but as a matter of fact, we do not need to tame anything. Just watch the ox constantly. We know we see the mind when a thought arises. Until we no longer see the ox nor the ox keeper, then we have already seen that all things are empty in nature. Devout Buddhists should always remember that all things are playing in our mind. When we look around, we cannot see the mind, but we cannot say there is no mind, because the consciousness arises and vanishes. We cannot say there is something called mind, because there is no trace of it at all. Thoughts come and go just like illusions. If we try to keep thoughts in our mind, we are trying to keep illusions, and there is no way we can get out of the sufferings and afflictions of the Saha world. However, practitioners should not try to empty any thought in our mind, because that is impossible. Just realize the law of dependent origination. Just see the emptiness nature of all things. Let's open our eyes and see things. We will see that all things are empty in nature. In short, in Buddhist point of view, man's mind influences his body profoundly. If allowed to function viciously and indulge in unwholesome thoughts, mind can cause disaster, can even cause one's death. But on the other hand, a mind imbued with wholesome thoughts can cure a sick body. When the mind is concentrated on right thoughts with right effort and right understanding, the effects it can produce are immense. Thus, a mind with pure and wholesome thoughts leads to a healthy and relaxed life. Mind is such a subtle and intricate phenomenon that it is impossible to find two men of the same mind. Man's thoughts are translated into speech and action. Repetition of such speech and action gives rise to habits, and finally habits form character. Character is the result of man's mind-directed activities, and so the characters of human beings vary. Thus, to understand the real nature of life, one has to explore the innermost recesses of one's mind, which can only be accomplished by deep self-introspection, based on purity of conduct and meditation. The Buddhist point of view is that the mind or consciousness is the core of our existence. Of all forces, the force of mind is the most potent. It is the power by itself. All our psychological experiences, such as pain and pleasure, sorrow and happiness, good and evil, life and death, are not attributed to any external agency. They are the result of our own thoughts and their resultant actions. To train our force of mind means to try to guide our minds to follow the wholesome path and to stay away from the unwholesome path. According to Buddhism teachings, training the mind doesn't mean to gain union with any supreme beings, nor to bring about any mystical experiences, nor is it for any self-hypnosis. It is for gaining tranquility of mind and insight for the sole purpose of attaining unshakable deliverance of the mind. For a long period of time, we all talk about air, land, and environment pollution. What about our mind pollution? Should we do something to prevent our minds from wandering far deep into the polluted courses? Yes, we should. We should equally protect and cleanse our mind. The Buddha once taught, "For a long time has man's mind been defiled by greed, hatred, and delusion. Mental defilements make beings impure, and only mental cleansing can purify them." Devout Buddhists should always keep in mind that our daily life is an intense process of cleansing our own action, speech, and thoughts. And we can only achieve this kind of cleansing through practice, not philosophical speculation or logical abstraction. Remember, the Buddha once said, "Though one conquers in battle 1,000 times 1,000 men, yet he is the greatest conqueror who conquers himself." This is nothing other than training of your own monkey mind, or self-mastery, or control your own mind. It means mastering our own mental contents, our emotions, likes and dislikes, and so forth. Thus, self-mastery is the greatest empire a man can aspire unto, and to be subject to our own passions is the most grievous slavery. Basic understanding on the mind. In Buddhism, mind is the root of all dharmas. The mind or thoughts is the storehouse of karma, wholesome or unwholesome. The Sanskrit term chitta is defined as the whole system of vijnas, originally pure, or mind. Besides, citta is generally translated as thought. In the Lankavatara Sutra as well as in other Mahayana sutras, citta may better be rendered mind. When it is defined as accumulation or as storehouse, where karma seeds are deposited, it is not mere thought, it has an ontological signification also. In the Dhammapada Sutta, the Buddha taught, mind foreruns deeds, mind is chief, and mind-made are they. Mind is another name for alaya vijnana. Unlike the material body, immaterial mind is invisible. We are aware of our thoughts and feelings and so forth by direct sensation, and we infer their existence in others by analogy. The mind is the root of all dharmas. In Contemplation of the Mind Sutra, the Buddha taught, all my tenets are based on the mind that is the source of all dharmas. The mind has brought about the Buddhas, the heaven or the hell. It is the main driving force that makes us happy or sorrowful, cheerful or sad, liberated or doomed. In Zen, it means either the mind of a person in the sense of all his powers of consciousness, mind, heart, and spirit, or else absolutely reality, the mind beyond the distinction between mind and matter. It is for the sake of giving practitioners an easier understanding of mind, Buddhist teachers usually divide the mind into aspects or layers. But to Zen, mind is one great whole, without parts or divisions. The manifestating, illuminating, and non-substantial characteristics of mind exist simultaneously and constantly, inseparable and indivisible in their totality. According to Buddhism, understanding is not an accumulation of knowledge. To the contrary, it is the result of the struggle to become free of knowledge. Understanding shatters old knowledge to make room for the new that accords better with reality. When Copernicus discovered that the Earth goes around the Sun, most of the astronomical knowledge of the time had to be discarded, including the ideas of above and below. Today, physics is struggling valiantly to free itself from the ideas of identity and cause-effect that underlie classical science. Science, like the Way, urges us to get rid of all preconceived notions. Understanding in human is translated into concepts, thoughts, and words. Understanding is not an aggregate of bits of knowledge. It is a direct and immediate penetration. In the realm of sentiment, it is feeling. In the realm of intellect, it is perception. It is an intuition rather than the culmination of reasoning. Every now and again, it is fully present in us, and we find we cannot express it in words, thoughts, or concepts. Unable to describe it, that is our situation at such moments. Insights like this are spoken of in Buddhism as impossible to reason about, to discuss, or to incorporate into doctrines or systems of thought. Besides, understanding also means a shield to protect cultivator from the attack of greed, hatred, and ignorance. A man often does wrong because of his ignorance or misunderstanding about himself, his desire of gaining happiness, and the way to obtain happiness. Understanding will also help cultivators with the ability to remove all defilements and strengthen their virtues. Characteristics of mind. All of our desires develop because of the thoughts of our mental factor intention. When we see an attractive object, we develop a wish to obtain that object. In contrary, when we see an unattractive object, we develop a wish not to obtain that object. Sometimes we hate the object. Generally speaking, almost all delusions created by mental ignorance or passion of the heart. The discriminating mind or the deluded mind itself lies at the roof of this birth and death, but people think that this mind is their real mind, so the delusion enters into the causes and conditions that produce suffering. In Buddhist point of view, man's mind influences his body profoundly. If allowed to function viciously and indulge in unwholesome thoughts, mind can cause disaster, can even cause one's death. But on the contrary, a mind imbued with wholesome thoughts can cure a sick body. These are summaries of some of the characters of the mind. However, if we dig a little deeper into details, we will see that the human's mind has many more different characteristics. Characteristics of an unrest monkey in the mind. The functions of mind are very extensive and numberless. Practitioners should always remember that the mind is climbing and jumping like a monkey from trees to trees, as a restless monkey. Someone asks a Zen master on how to look into one's self-nature. The Zen master replies, "How can? For if there is a cage with 6 windows in which there is a monkey, someone calls at one window, 'Oh monkey,' and he replies. Someone else calls at another window, and again he replies, and so on. Human's mind is no different from that monkey. That's why the Buddha always reminded his disciples, mind is like an unrest monkey jumping from one tree to another. The activities of the mind have no limit. Mind originates delusion. Mind originates enlightenment. According to the Zen teaching of Huang Po, one day, Zen master Huang Po entered the hall to preach the assembly. Mind is Buddha, while the cessation of conceptual thought is the way. Everything existence or phenomenon arises from the functions of the mind. Mind creates nirvana. Mind creates hells. An impure mind surrounds itself with impure things. A pure mind surrounds itself with pure things. Surroundings have no more limits than the activities of the mind. Mind creates Buddhas. Buddha is like our mind. Mind creates ordinary men. Sentient beings are just like our mind. The mind is a skillful painter who creates pictures of various worlds. There is nothing in the world that is not mind created. Both life and death arise from the mind and exist within the mind. The mind creates greed, anger, and ignorance. However, that very mind is also able to create giving, patience, and wisdom. A mind that is bewildered by its own world of delusion will lead beings to an unenlightened life. If we learn that there is no world of delusion outside of the mind, the bewildered mind becomes clear. We cease to create impure surroundings, and we attain enlightenment. The mind is the master of every situation. It rules and controls everything. The world of suffering is brought about by the deluded mortal mind. The world of eternal joy is also brought about by the mind, but a clear mind. The mind is as the wheels follow the ox that draws the cart. So does suffering follow the person who speaks and acts with an impure mind. If the mind is impure, it will cause the feet to stumble along a raw and difficult road. But if a mind is pure, the path will be smooth and the journey peaceful. Characteristics of the functioning of the mind. In the studies of the Lankavatara Sutra, Zen master D.T. Suzuki distinguished 2 kinds of functioning of the mind. First, functioning is dependent on the individualizing mind and is perceived by the minds of the 2 vehicle followers. It is known as responding body. As they do not know that this is projected by their evolving mind, they take it for something external to themselves, and making it assume a corporeal form, fail to have a thorough knowledge of its nature. Second, functioning is dependent on the karma consciousness. That is, it appears to the minds of those bodhisattvas who have just entered upon the path of bodhisattvahood, as well as of those who have reached the highest stage. This is known as the recompense body. The body is visible in infinite forms. Each form has infinite marks, and each mark is excellent in infinite ways. And the world in which the body has its abode is also embellished in manners infinite varying. As the body is manifested everywhere, it has no limitations whatever. It can never be exhausted. It goes beyond all the conditions of determination. According to the needs of all beings, it becomes visible and is always held by them. It is neither destroyed nor lost sight of. All such characteristics of the body are the perfuming effect of the immaculate deeds, such as the virtues of perfection, and also the work of the mysterious perfuming innate in the Tathagata Garbha. As it is thus possession of immeasurably blissful qualities, it is called recompense body. Third, besides these 2 kinds of functioning, the third kind of functioning is that the mind always functioning without limitations or obstacles. When we speak of mind, we usually think of psychological phenomena such as feelings, thoughts, or perceptions. When we speak of objects of mind, we think of physical phenomena such as mountains, trees, or animals. Speaking this way, we see the phenomenal aspects of mind and its objects, but we don't see their nature. We have observed that these 2 kinds of phenomena, mind and objects of mind, rely on one another for their existence and are therefore interdependent. But we do not see that they themselves have the same nature. This nature is sometimes called mind and sometimes called suchness. Whatever we call it, we cannot measure this nature using concepts. It is boundless and all-inclusive, without limitations or obstacles. From the point of view of unity, it is called Dharmakaya. From the point of view of duality, it is called mind without obstacle, encountering world without obstacle. The Avatamsaka Sutra calls it unobstructed mind and unobstructed object. The mind and the world contain each other so completely and perfectly that we call this perfect unity of mind and object. Characteristics of the mind that understands ourselves. Understanding ourselves means understanding things as they really are. That is, seeing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-substantial or non-self nature of the five aggregates of clinging in ourselves. It is not easy to understand ourselves because of our wrong concepts, baseless illusions, perversions, and delusions. It is so difficult to see the real person. The Buddha taught that in order to be able to understand ourselves, we must first see and understand the impermanence of the five aggregates. He compares material form or body to a lump of foam, feeling to a bubble, perception to a mirage, mental formations or volitional activities to water lily plant which is without heartwood, and consciousness to an illusion. The Buddha says, "Whatever material form there be, whether past, future, or present, internal, external, gross or subtle, low or lofty, far or near, that material form is empty, unsubstantial, and without essence. In the same manner, the remaining aggregates, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness are also empty, unsubstantial, and without essence. Thus the five aggregates are impermanent. Whatever is impermanent, that is suffering, unsatisfactory, and without self. Whenever you understand this, you understand yourselves." The most special point of the mind, no one can run away from it. According to Bhikkhu Piyanananda in the Gems of Buddhism Wisdom, you cannot run away from your mind. By meditation, you can train the mind to keep calm and be free from disturbances either from within or outside. Apply concentrated awareness to the internal confusions and mental conflicts and observe or pay attention to all the changing states of your mind. When the mind is properly developed, it brings happiness and bliss. If the mind is neglected, it runs you into endless troubles and difficulties. The disciplined mind is strong and effective, while the wavering mind is weak and ineffective. The wise train their minds as thoroughly as a horse trainer trains their horses. Therefore, you should watch your mind. When you sit alone, you should observe the changing conditions of the mind. The task is only a matter of observing the changing states, not fighting with the mind, or avoid it or try to control it. When the mind is in a state of lust, be aware that we are having a mind of lust. When the mind is in a state of hatred, or when it is free from hatred, be aware that we are having a mind of hatred or free from hatred. When you have the concentrated mind or the scattered mind, you should be aware that we are having a concentrated or a scattered mind. You should always remember that your job is to observe all these changing conditions without identifying yourself with them. Your job is to turn your attention away from the outside world and focus in yourself. This is very difficult, but it can be done. In all activities of your daily life, you should always watch your mind and to observe your mind in all kinds of situations. To observe the working of your mind without identifying with or finding justification for your thoughts, without erecting the screen of prejudice, without expecting reward or satisfaction. To observe the senses of desire, hatred, jealousy, and other unwholesome states that arise and upset the balance of the mind. Continue meditation practices to check and eliminate these harmful elements. The mind is the core of our existence. According to the Buddhist point of view, the mind or consciousness is the core of our existence. All our psychological experiences, such as pain and pleasure, sorrow and happiness, good and evil, life and death, are not attributed to any external agency. They are only the result of our own thoughts and their resultant actions. Mind actually influences the body in every minute of life. If we allow it to function with the vicious and unwholesome thoughts, mind can cause disaster. It can even kill another being. However, when the mind is concentrated on right thoughts with right effort and understanding, it can produce an excellent effect. Thus, the Buddha taught, no enemy can harm one so much as one's own thoughts of craving, thoughts of hate, thoughts of jealousy, and so on. A mind with pure and wholesome thoughts really lead to a peaceful and relaxed life. Mind is not separate from the world of thoughts and feelings. How can it leave and retire into itself? When we look at the tree in front of us, Our mind does not go outside of us into the forest, nor does it open a door to let the trees in. Our mind fixes on the trees, but they are not a distinct object. Our mind and the trees are one. The trees are only one of the miraculous manifestations of the mind. According to the sutra, in 42 sections, chapter 31, the Buddha said, "There was once someone who, plagued by ceaseless sexual desire, wished to castrate himself. To cut off your sexual organs would not be as good as to cut off your mind. Your mind is like a supervisor. If the supervisor stops, his employees will also quit. If the deviant mind is not stopped, what good does it do to cut off the organs?" The Kasyapa Buddha taught, "Desire is born from your will. Your will is born from thought. When both aspects of the mind are still, there is neither form nor activity." The power of the mind power or willpower, is the strength of the mind. Because our mind thoughts have many strengths and weaknesses which keep pulling us, therefore, when we die, our consciousness will go with the stronger force. The force of the mind is also called the power of the mind. In Buddhist point of view, man's mind influences his body profoundly. If allowed to function viciously and indulge in unwholesome thoughts, mind can cause disaster, can even cause one's death. But on the other hand, a mind imbued with wholesome thoughts can cure a sick body. When the mind is concentrated on right thoughts with right effort and right understanding, the effects it can produce are immense. Thus, a mind with pure and wholesome thoughts leads to a healthy and relaxed life. Mind is such a subtle and intricate phenomenon that it is impossible to find two men of the same mind. Man's thoughts are translated into speech and action. Repetition of such speech and action gives rise to habits, and finally habits form character. Character is the result of man's mind-directed activities, and so the characters of human beings vary. Thus, to understand the real nature of life, one has to explore the innermost recesses of one's mind, which can only be accomplished by deep self-introspection based on purity of conduct and meditation. The Buddhist point of view is that the mind or consciousness is the core of our existence. Of all forces, the force of mind is the most potent. It is the power by itself. All our psychological experiences, such as pain and pleasure, sorrow and happiness, good and evil, life and death, are not attributed to any external agency. They are the result of our own thoughts and their resultant actions. To train our force of mind means to try to guide our minds to follow the wholesome path and to stay away from the unwholesome path. According to Buddhism teachings, training the mind doesn't mean to gain union with any supreme beings, nor to bring about any mystical experiences, nor is it for any self-hypnosis. It is for gaining tranquility of mind and insight, for the sole purpose of attaining unshakable deliverance of the mind. For a long period of time, we all talk about air, land, and environment pollution. What about our mind pollution? Should we do something to prevent our minds from wandering far deep into the polluted courses? Yes, we should. We should equally protect and cleanse our mind. The Buddha once taught, "For a long time has man's mind been defiled by greed, hatred, and delusion. Mental defilements make beings impure, and only mental cleansing can purify them." Devout Buddhists should always keep in mind that our daily life is an intense process of cleansing our own action, speech, and thoughts. And we can only achieve this kind of cleansing through practice, not philosophical speculation or logical abstraction. Remember, the Buddha once said, "Though one conquers in battle 1,000 times 1,000 men, yet he is the greatest conqueror who conquers himself." This is nothing other than training of your own monkey mind, or self-mastery, or control your own mind. It means mastering our own mental contents, our emotions, likes and dislikes, and so forth. Thus, self-mastery is the greatest empire a man can aspire unto, and to be subject to our own passions is the most grievous slavery. Practicing of meditation in Buddhism is not a state of self-suggestion. Enlightenment does not consist in producing a certain premeditated condition by intensely thinking of it. Meditation is the growing conscious of a new power in the mind, which enabled it to judge things from a new point of view. The cultivation of Zen consists in upsetting the existing artificially constructed framework once for all, and in remodeling it on an entirely new basis. The older frame is called ignorance, and the new one, enlightenment. It is evident that no products of our relative consciousness or intelligent faculty can play any part in Zen. However, Zen practitioners should not think about becoming Buddhas, getting enlightened, or gaining wisdom. We should simply work hard and cultivate vigorously. When the time comes, they naturally become enlightened. Continue to sit and walk, walk and sit. Then after a long time, we will have a chance to realize the power of the mind. Mind is a skillful painter who creates pictures of various worlds. Mind in action means siddha samskara, or mental formation, the creation of the mind or mental functions. The activities of the mind, heart, or the working on the mind for its control. The activities of the mind have no limit. The mind originate delusion because the Buddhas taught, everything existence or phenomenon arises from the functions of the mind. The mind creates nirvana, the mind creates hells. An impure mind surrounds itself with impure things. A pure mind surrounds itself with pure things. Surroundings have no more limits than the activities of the mind. The mind creates Buddhas. Buddha is like our mind, and the mind also creates ordinary men. Sentient beings is just like our mind. Mind is such a subtle and intricate phenomenon that it is impossible to find two men of the same mind. The mind is a skillful painter who creates pictures of various worlds. There is nothing in the world that is not mind-created. When a dog barks, we'd hear it and know it was a dog barking because our mind of self-awareness already painted out for us a barking dog. When a crow cawed, we'd hear it and know it was a crow because our mind of self-awareness already painted out for us a cawing crow. When our eyes see and distinguish reds and whites and other colors, we'd see them and know that they are red, white, and some other colors, because our mind of self-awareness already painted out for us these colors of red, white, and some other colors, etc. Buddhist practitioners should always remember that both life and death arise from the mind and exist within the mind. The mind creates greed, anger, and ignorance. However, that very mind is also able to create giving, patience, and wisdom. A mind that is bewildered by its own world of delusion will lead beings to an unenlightened life. If we learn that there is no world of delusion outside of the mind, the bewildered mind becomes clear, we cease to create impure surroundings, and we attain enlightenment. The mind is the master of every situation. It rules and controls everything. The world of suffering is brought about by the deluded mortal mind. The world of eternal joy is also brought about by the mind, but a clear mind. The mind is as the wheels follow the ox that draws the cart, so does suffering follow the person who speaks and acts with an impure mind. If the mind is impure, it will cause the feet to stumble along a raw and difficult road. But if a mind is pure, the path will be smooth and the journey peaceful. From the Buddhist point of view, all the circumstances of our life are manifestations of our own consciousness. This is the fundamental understanding of Buddhism. From painful, afflictive, and confused situations to happy and peaceful circumstances, all are rooted in our own mind. Our problems are we tend to follow the lead of that restless mind, a mind that continuously gives birth to new thoughts and ideas. As a result, we are lured from one situation to another, hoping to find happiness, yet we only experience nothing but fatigue and disappointment, and in the end, we keep moving in the cycle of birth and death. The solution is not to suppress our thoughts and desires, for this would be impossible. It would be like trying to cover a stone over grass. Grass will find its way to survive. We must find a better solution than that. Why do we not train ourselves to observe our thoughts without following them? This will deprive them their suppressing energy, and is therefore they will die out by themselves. In cultivation, Buddhist practitioners should always remember that mind is really a skillful painter because everything existence or phenomenon arises from the functions of the mind. The mind creates nirvana. The mind creates hells. For a Buddhist, both heaven and hell are right here, right in this world. That is to say, you can create your own heaven or hell right here in this world. It's ridiculous to create all kinds of unwholesome deeds, then simply with faith or praying you can create a heaven. Buddhist belief in heaven is simple. If you live and act according to moral principles, you can create your own heaven right here in this world. These are 4 heavenly regions which practitioners try to reach. If not, you can also create the hell on this earth itself. In cultivation, let's always try to watch the so-called skillful painter. An overview of the inner world. For the understanding of the world within, science may not be of much help to us. Ultimate truth cannot be found in science. To the scientist, knowledge is something that ties him more and more to this sentient existence. That knowledge, therefore, is not saving knowledge. To one who views the world and all it holds in its proper perspective, the primary concern of life is not mere speculation or vain voyaging into the imaginary regions of high fantasy, but the gaining of true happiness and freedom from ill or unsatisfactoriness. To him, true knowledge depends on this question: is this learning according to actuality? Can it be of use to us in the conquest of mental peace and tranquility, of real happiness? To understand the world within, we need the guidance, the instruction of a competent and genuine seer, clarity of vision and depth of insight, penetrate into the deepest recesses of life, and cognize the true nature that underlies all appearance. He, indeed, is the true philosopher, true scientist, who has grasped the meaning of change in the fullest sense, and has transmuted this understanding into a realization of the deepest truths fathomable by man. The truths of the three signs or characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, non-self. No more can he be confused by the terrible or swept off his feet by the glamour of thing ephemeral. No more is it possible for him to have a clouded view of phenomena, for he has transcended all capacity for error through the perfect immunity which insight alone can give. A ceaselessly inner struggle. Cultivate the mind and nurture the nature. Usually the word mind is understood for both heart and brain. However, in Buddhism, mind does not mean just the brain or the intellect. Mind also means consciousness or the knowing faculty, that which knows an object, along with all of the mental and emotional feeling states associated with that knowing. Thus, cultivating the mind means practicing the four great efforts in the Buddha's teachings. We try to diminish the unwholesome mental states that have already arisen and to prevent those that have not yet arisen from arising. At the same time, we make effort to strengthen those wholesome mental states that are already developed, and to cultivate and develop the wholesome states that have not yet arisen. The Buddha taught all novices, a monk, especially a novice, who practices the way should not like a buffalo pulling a rotating grain mill. He should practice with all his mind. If the way of the mind is cultivated, where the need to cultivate the body. According to Zen Master Dogen in Mending Mind, if you want to attain something, you should set right about working on it. For intensive Zen meditation, a quiet room is appropriate. Food and drink are to be moderate, letting go of all mental objects, taking a respite from all concerns, not thinking of good or evil, not being concerned with right or wrong, halt the operations of mind, intellect, and consciousness. Stop assessment by thought, imagination, and view. Do not aim to become a Buddha, and how could it be limited to sitting or reclining? While according to Buddhism, nature stands in most cases for the ultimate constituent, or something ultimate in the being of a thing or a person, or that which is left after all that accidentally belongs to a thing is taken away from it. It may be questioned what is accidental and what is essential in the constitution of an individual object. Though it must not be conceived as an individual entity, like a kernel or nucleus, which is left when all the outer casings are removed, or like a soul which escapes from the body after death. Nature means something without which no existence is possible or thinkable as such. As its morphological construction suggests, it is a heart or mind which lives within an individual. Figuratively, it may be called vital force. According to the sixth patriarch Huineng, the Buddha is to be made within nature and not to be sought outside the body. In the Platform Sutra, the sixth patriarch Huineng defined nature as follows. The nature, or mind or heart, is the dominion. Nature is the Lord. The rules over his dominion, there is nature and there is the Lord. Nature departs, and the Lord is no more. Nature is, and the body and mind subsists. Nature is not, and the body and mind is destroyed. In this, Huineng attempts to give us a clearer understanding of what he means by nature. Nature is the dominating force over our entire being. It is the principle of vitality, physical and spiritual. Not only the body but also the mind in its highest sense is active because of nature being present in them. When nature is no more, all is dead. though this does not mean that nature is something apart from the body and mind, which enters into it to actuate it and depart at the time of death. This mysterious nature, however, is not a logical a priori, but an actuality which can be experienced, and it is designated by Huineng as self-nature, or self-being, throughout his Platform Sutra. To cultivate to achieve a peaceful and concentrated mind. In our cultivation, we think that noises, cars, voices, sights, and so forth are distractions that come and bother us when we want to be quiet. But who is bothering whom? Actually, we are the ones who go and bother them. The car, the sound, the noise, the sight, and so forth are just following their own nature. We bother things through some false idea that they are outside of us and cling to the ideal of remaining quiet, undisturbed. We should learn to see that it is not things that bother us, that we go out to bother them. We should see the world as a mirror. It is all a reflection of mind. When we know this, we can grow in every moment. And every experience reveals truth and brings understanding. Normally, the untrained mind is full of worries and anxieties, so when a bit of tranquility arises from practicing meditation, we easily become attached to it, mistaking states of tranquility for the end of meditation. Sometimes we may even think we have put an end to lust or greed or hatred, only to be overwhelmed by them later on. Actually, it is worse to be caught in calmness than to be stuck in agitation, because at least we will want to escape from agitation, whereas we are content to remain in calmness and not go any further. Thus, when extraordinarily blissful, clear states arise from insight meditation practice, do not cling to them. Although this tranquility has a sweet taste, it too must be seen as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and empty. Practicing meditation without thought of attaining absorption or any special state. Just know whether the mind is calm or not, and if so, whether a little or a lot. In this way, it will develop on its own. Concentration must be firmly established for wisdom to arise. To concentrate the mind is like turning on the switch. There is no light, but we should not waste our time playing with the switch. Likewise, concentration is the empty bowl and wisdom is the food that fills it and makes the meal. Do not be attached to the object of meditation such as a mantra. Know its purpose. If we succeed in concentrating our mind using the Buddha recitation, let the Buddha recitation go. But it is a mistake to think that Buddha recitation is the end of our cultivation. Devout Buddhists should always remember that we can only have peaceful and concentration mind when we cultivate and abide, establish themselves in the teachings of the Buddha, not depending upon anybody else. In the Unborn, Zen Master Bankei wrote, "There was once a monk in my temple who had been dozing off. Another monk saw him and really laid into him with a stick. I reprimanded him. Why hit him when he's enjoying a pleasant nap? Do you think he leaves the Buddha mind and goes somewhere else when he sleeps? If you stay awake, you stay awake. If you sleep, you sleep. When you sleep in the same Buddha mind you were awake in. When you're awake in the same Buddha mind you were sleeping in. You sleep in the Buddha mind while you sleep and are up and about in the Buddha mind while you are up and about. That way, you always stay in the Buddha mind. You're never apart from it for an instant." Due to these above-mentioned reasons, Buddhist practitioners should always have a peaceful and concentrated mind. In other words, a peaceful and concentrated mind is always good for any cultivator. Devoted Buddhists should always make the mind peaceful, concentrated, and use this concentration to examine the mind and body. When the mind is not peaceful, we should also watch. Then we will know true peace, because we will see impermanence. Even peace must be seen as impermanent. If we are attached to peaceful states of mind, we will suffer when we do not have them. Give up everything, even the concept of peace. A mindful mind is the strength that helps leading to a life full of peace and happiness. A mindful mind or mindfulness is the first factor of enlightenment. Smrti, a Sanskrit term for mindfulness. Mindfulness means attention or mindfulness of all mental and physical activities, even at breathing, standing, lying, or sitting. The purpose of smrti is to control and to purify the mind. This is one of the focal points of meditative practice in Buddhism, which involves cultivating awareness of one's body, speech, and thoughts in order to become consciously aware of what one does and one's motivations. It is the seventh part of the Eightfold Noble Path, and it leads to the direct understanding of the real nature of all things. Recollection means memory or mindfulness. Sati also has the following meanings: attentiveness, fixing the mind strongly on any subject; mindfulness, remembrance, memory, attention, reflection, recollection, consciousness, and all that arise from our mind. Besides, the nearest equivalent term in Pali for mindfulness is sati. Mindfulness has come to be the accepted translation of sati into English. However, this word has a kind of passive connotation which can be misleading. Mindfulness must be dynamic and confrontative. Mindfulness should leap onto the object, covering it completely, penetrating into it, not missing any part of it. Mindfulness can be well understood by examining its three aspects of characteristics: function and manifestation. Awareness simply means being conscious of, or remembering, or becoming acquainted with, but we must use it in the sense of being in the process of being conscious of, or being in the process of remembering. We have learned the word awareness in the sense of recognition or bare attention, but the meaning doesn't stop there. In awareness, there are also the elements of concentration, samadhi, and understanding, prajna. Concentration and understanding together are meditate on the absence of identity of all things. Smrti, a Sanskrit term for mindfulness. Mindfulness means attention or mindfulness of all mental and physical activities, even at breathing, standing, lying, or sitting. The purpose of smrti is to control and to purify the mind. This is one of the focal points of meditative practice in Buddhism, which involves cultivating awareness of one's body, speech, and thoughts in order to become consciously aware of what one does and one's motivations. It is the seventh part of the Eightfold Noble Path, and it leads to the direct understanding of the real nature of all things. In Zen, right mindfulness also means the reflection on the present and future events or situations. We must meditate upon human sufferings that are caused by ignorance and decide to work for alleviating them, irrespective of possible difficulties and boredom. Correct memory, which retains the true and excludes the false. Dwell in contemplation of corporeality. Be mindful and putting away worldly greed and grief. Correct mindfulness also means ongoing mindfulness of body, feelings, thinking, and objects of thought. Correct mindfulness involves cultivating a state of mental clarity and alertness, in which one is aware of one's mental processes and attitudes, and more importantly, in which one is in control of them. Through continuous self-examination and mental alertness, one can develop the mindfulness that enables one to master one's emotions, thoughts, and feelings, and focus them in the direction of awakening, bodhi. As mentioned above, correct mindfulness also means ongoing mindfulness of body, feelings, thinking, and objects of thought. When we are mindful of our breathing, we are also mindful of our mind. Later we will see our mind becoming one with our breath. When we are mindful of our bodily movement, we are also mindful of our mind. Then, a moment later, we will see our mind becoming one with our body. Let's look at our mind. We see thoughts coming and going, just like waves rising and falling, until we see no thoughts occurring. Our mind is peaceful, just like a still pool. The Sutra of Mindfulness says, when walking, you must be conscious that you are walking. When standing, you must be conscious that you are standing. When sitting, you must be conscious that you are sitting. When lying down, you must be conscious that you are lying down. No matter what position your body is in and your mind is thinking, you must be conscious of that position or that thought. Practicing thus, you are always mindful of what you are doing and thinking at all times. Buddhists should always remember that we should be mindful that we are capable of living at the very present time. Whatever we are doing at the present time is the most important thing for our life. When we are talking, talking must be the most important thing in our life. When we are walking, walking must be the most important thing in our life. When we are drinking tea must be the most important thing in our life, and so on. Every activity in our daily life is meditation. Therefore, we are able to be mindful 24 hours a day, not just the moment we may allot for sitting meditation. Each act must be carried out in mindfulness. According to the Satipatthana Sutta, practitioner should contemplate the body in the body, contemplate the feelings in the feelings, contemplate the mind in the mind, contemplate the objects of mind in the objects of mind. This means that practitioner must live in the body in full awareness of it, and not just study like a separate object. Live in awareness with feelings, mind, and objects of mind. Do not just study them. When we meditate on our body, we live with it as truth and give it our most lucid attention. We become one with it. The flower blossoms because sunlight touches and warms its bud, becoming one with it. Meditation reveals not a concept of truth, but a direct view of truth itself. This we call insight, the kind of understanding based on attention and concentration. In the ceaselessly inner struggle, according to Buddhism, there are many types of cultivation that can create a mindful mind. First, mindfulness by being aware of all activities. In Buddhism, mindfulness means being aware of all activities, both physical and mental. A meditator who is mindful of his bodily activities becomes aware of his postures, when walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. All his bodily activities he does with mindfulness. In walking to and from, in looking ahead, and in looking aside, he applies mindfulness. In bending and stretching, he applies mindfulness. In wearing clothes, in eating, drinking, chewing, etc., he applies mindfulness. In walking, standing, sitting, lying down, he applies mindfulness. In keeping awake, speaking, and being silent, he applies mindfulness. The characteristic of mindfulness is non-superficiality. This suggests that mindfulness is penetrative and profound. If we throw a cork into a stream, it simply pops up and down on the surface, floating downstream with the current. If we throw a stone instead, it will immediately sink to the very bottom of the stream. So too, mindfulness ensures that the mind will sink deeply into the object and not slip superficially past it. The function of mindfulness is to keep the object always in view, neither forgetting it nor allowing it to disappear. When mindfulness is present, the occurring object will be noted without forgetfulness. Second, mindfulness by not only an observation in appearance. In order for non-superficiality and non-disappearance, the characteristic and function of mindfulness, to appear clearly in our practice, we must try to understand and practice the third aspect of mindfulness. This is the manifestation aspect, which develops and brings along the other two. The chief manifestation of mindfulness is confrontation. It sets the mind directly face to face with the object, just the same as when we are walking along a road and we meet a traveler, face to face, coming from the opposite direction. When we are meditating, the mind should meet the object in just this way. Only through direct confrontation with an object can true mindfulness arise. As a practitioner repeatedly comes face to face with the object, his or her efforts begin to bear fruit. Mindfulness is activated and becomes firmly established on the object of observation. There are no misses. The objects do not fall away from view. They neither slip away nor disappear, nor are they absent-mindedly forgotten. The kilesas cannot infiltrate this strong barrier of mindfulness. If mindfulness can be maintained for a significant period of time, the practitioner can discover a great purity of mind because of the absence of kilesas. Protection from attack by the kilesas is a second aspect of the manifestation. When mindfulness is persistently and repeatedly activated, wisdom arises. There will be insight into the true nature of body and mind. Not only does the practitioner realize the true experiential sensations in his or her own body, but he or she also comprehends the individual characteristics of the various physical and mental phenomena happening inside him or herself. Third, mindfulness by being mindful of one's body activities. The meditator who is mindful of his body activities becomes aware of his postures. When going, walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, he is aware of the postures. All his bodily activities he does with mindfulness. In walking to and from, in looking ahead and in looking aside, he applies clear comprehension. In bending and stretching, he applies clear comprehension. In wearing the clothes, in eating, drinking, chewing, savoring, in answering the calls of nature, he applies clear comprehension. Walking, standing, sitting, lying down, in keeping awake, speaking, and being silent, he applies clear comprehension. When lying down, a practitioner should lie down with his mind on the subject of meditation, and thus falls asleep undiluted. Meditator should always be mindful and wide awake. Hear these words of the Buddha. Mindfulness, O monks, I declare, is essential in all things everywhere. It is as salt to curry. O monks, I know of no other thing that brings such profits as mindfulness. Mindfulness, verily, brings great profit. One has to understand the question of mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati sampajana, in a wider sense. Of course, the discussion of the fourfold effort, already mentioned, is a good safeguard. Mindfulness has to be spread over all situations at the outset, so that its calmness helps one to take stock of a situation wisely. But, as an aspect of the middle path itself, upon occasion one has to exert the fourfold effort, even the vigorous type, when bare awareness is in itself insufficient. Fourth, mindfulness by being aware of daily activities, according to Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh in The Miracle of Mindfulness. The master recalls a small book titled The Essential Discipline for Daily Use, written by Buddhist monk Dokta from Bao San Pagoda. This is a thin book with about 40 pages, but it contained all the thoughts that monk Dokta used to awaken his mind while doing any task. When he woke up in the morning, his first thought was, "Just awakened. I hope that every person will attain awareness and see in complete clarity." When he washed his hand, he used this thought to place himself in mindfulness. "Washing my hands, I hope that every person will have pure hands to receive reality." This book is comprised entirely of such sentences. Their goal was to help the beginning practitioners take hold of their own consciousness. Monk Dokta helped all young novices to practice, in a relatively easy way, those things which are taught in the Sutra of Mindfulness. Each time you put on your robe, washed the dishes, went to the bathroom, folded your mat, carried buckets of water, or brushed your teeth, etc., you could use one of the thoughts from the book in order to take hold of your consciousness. The Sutra of Mindfulness says, when walking, the practitioner must be conscious that he is walking. When sitting, the practitioner must be conscious that he is sitting. When lying down, the practitioner must be conscious that he is lying. No matter what position one's body is in, the practitioner must be conscious of that position. Practicing thus, the practitioner lives in direct and constant mindfulness of the body. The mindfulness of the position of one's body is not enough, however. One must be conscious of each breath, each movement, every thought and feeling, everything which has any relation to the practitioner. Fifth, mindfulness of the body postures. According to the Kayagasati Sutta in the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, cultivation of mindfulness of the body means when walking, a person understands that he is walking. When standing, he understands that he is standing. When sitting, he understands that he is sitting. When lying, he understands that he is lying. He understands accordingly, however, his body is disposed. As he abides thus diligent, ardent, and resolute, his memories and intentions based on the household life are abandoned. That is how a person develops mindfulness of the body. Sixth, mindfulness by being aware of the false. Even lay people, who are still busy with daily activities, should also watch the mind, be mindful of the false thoughts, and stop wandering with them. Once the false decreasing, we will have the real opportunity to live with our own mind, or true mind. Seventh, mindfulness by being able to listen with a vacant mind. The Buddha taught, "You are what you think, that your mind makes this world." Try not to think of anything because they all are impermanent. Let's gently listen, deeply listen. Try not to listen to a specific sound, just listen with our mind vacant. We will feel that all the sounds come and go, just like echoes, just like illusions, and just like a dream. That's all. Let's look at a mirror. Images comes and goes, but the reflecting nature is always in action, unmoved, uncreated, undying. Let's be mindful to look at our mind. Thoughts come and go, but the nature of seeing of the mind is always in action, unmoved, uncreated, undying. In summary, in the ceaselessly inner struggle, a mindful mind can help us overcome angers in many occasions. A mindful mind does not fight anger or despair. A mindful mind is there in order to recognize something. To be mindful of something is to recognize that something is present at this very moment. A mindful mind has the ability to perceive what are happening in the present moment. According to Most Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh in anger, the best way to be mindful of anger is, when breathing in, I know that anger has manifested in me. Breathing out, I smile towards my anger. This is not an act of suppression or of fighting. It is an act of recognizing. Once we recognize our anger, we are able to take good care of it, or to embrace it with a lot of awareness. a lot of tenderness. Mindfulness helps us be aware of the presence of anger. Mindfulness also helps us accept and allow anger to be there. Mindfulness is like a big brother who does not suppress his younger brother's suffering. He simply says, "Dear brother, I'm here for you." You take your younger brother in your arms and you comfort him. This is exactly our practice. Our anger is us, and our compassion is also us. To be mindful in meditation does not mean to fight. In Buddhism, the practice of mindfulness should be the practice of embracing and transforming the anger, not of fighting. When anger comes up in us, we should begin to practice mindful breathing right away. Breathing in, I know that anger is in me. Breathing out, I am taking good care of my anger. If you don't know how to treat yourself with compassion, how can you treat another person with compassion? When anger arises, continue to practice mindful breathing and mindful walking to generate the energy of mindfulness. Continue to tenderly embrace the energy of anger within you. Anger may continue to be there for some time, but you are safe, because the Buddha is in you, helping you to take good care of your anger. The energy of mindfulness is the energy of the Buddha. When you practice mindful breathing and embracing your anger, you are under the protection of the Buddha. There is no doubt about it. The Buddha is embracing you and your anger with a lot of compassion. A ceaselessly inner struggle. In this ceaselessly inner struggle, we should always have a mindful mind on what is happening at this very moment. To establish a mindful mind or wakefulness, effort is required constantly, not just when we feel diligent. Even if we meditate all night at times, it is not correct practice if at other times we still follow our laziness. In a ceaselessly inner struggle, we should constantly watch over the mind as a parent watches over a child, protects it from its own foolishness, teaches it what is right. It is incorrect to think that at certain times we do not have the opportunity to meditate. We must constantly make the effort to know ourselves. It is as necessary as our breathing, which continues in all situations. If we do not like certain activities, such as chanting or working, and give up on them as meditation, we will never learn wakefulness. To be mindful of what is happening at this very moment is the kind of attention which is necessary for any Zen practitioners. This is the state of total oneness with the object. For daily activities, the attention on one object is relatively easy, but this kind of attention in Zen is more valuable and much harder, because we have a tendency to dream about future, about the nice things we are going to have or are going to happen to us in the future. So we try to filter anything happening in the present through our reasoning. I do not like that, I do not have to listen to that, and so on and so on. And so we are willing to forget about our present and start dreaming of what is going to happen in the future. But when we behave like that, we will never see the precious, very present moment. One of the difficult problems for Zen practitioners is to constantly guide our wandering mind back to this very moment, because the ability to live in the present moment is all that we have to develop so that we can have a mindful life at this very moment. As a matter of fact, if we cannot live with the precious present moment from having sit quietly, our Zen sitting is nothing but fatigue, boredom, pain in both legs, and the whole body. Sitting meditation that leads to self-realization is neither idle reverie nor vacant inaction, but an intense inner struggle to gain control over the mind. Roshi, Zen master Hakuin Yasutani, 1885–1973, calls it a battle between the opposing forces of delusion and bodhi. This state of mind has been vividly described in these words, said to have been uttered by the Buddha as he sat beneath the bo tree making his supreme effort, and often quoted in the Zendo during session. Though only my skin, sinews, and bones remain, and my blood and flesh dry up and wither away, yet never from this seat will I stir until I have attained full enlightenment. The drive toward enlightenment is powered on the one hand by a painful felt inner bondage, a frustration with life, a fear of death, or both, and on the other by the conviction that through awakening one can gain liberation. But it is in Zazen that the body-mind's force and vigor are enlarged and mobilized for the breakthrough into this new world of freedom. In Buddhist cultivation, devotion to wakefulness is one of the most efficient ways used for this ceaselessly inner struggle. According to the Sekha Sutta in the middle-length discourses of the Buddha confirmed his noble disciples on devotion to wakefulness as follows. During the day, while walking back and forth and sitting, a noble disciple purifies his mind of obstructive states. In the first watch of the night, while back and forth and sitting, he purifies his mind of obstructive states. In the middle watch of the night, he lies down on the right side in the lion's pose with one foot overlapping the other, mindful and fully aware, after noting in his mind the time for rising. After rising, in the third watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, he purifies his mind of obstructive states. In Buddhism, attention or mindfulness refers to mindfulness of all mental and physical activities. This is the perfect mindfulness, i.e., the seventh element of the Eightfold Noble Path. Besides, cultivators must also develop firm vows of non-retrogression mind, unretreating mind, even if this body has to endure infinite degradations, pains, and sufferings, or even if this body is burned to ashes. Buddhist practitioners should always remember that although a practitioner may have repented his past transgressions and vowed to cultivate, his habitual delusions and obstructions are not easy to eliminate, nor is the accumulation of merits and virtues through cultivation of the 6 paramitas and 10,000 conducts necessarily easy to achieve. Moreover, the path of perfect enlightenment and Buddhahood is long and arduous, full of hardship and obstructions over the course of untold eons. It is not the work of 1 or 2 lifespans. For example, the elder Sariputra, one of the main disciples of Sakyamuni Buddha, had reached the 6th abode of bodhisattvahood in one of his previous incarnations and developed the Bodhi mind, practicing the paramita of charity. However, when an externalist, non-Buddhist, asked him for one of his eyes and then, instead of using it, spat on it and crushed it with his foot, even Sariputra became angry and retreated from the Mahayana mind. We can see, therefore, that holding fast to our vows is not an easy thing. For this reason, if the practitioner wishes to keep his Bodhi mind from retrogressing, he should be strong and firm in his vows. He should vow thus: although this body of mine may endure immense suffering and hardship, be beaten to death or even reduced to ashes, I shall not, in consequence, commit wicked deeds or retrogress in my cultivation. Practicing with such a non-retrogressing mind is called developing the Bodhi mind. The light of samadhi emits brightness. When the essence of the brightness enters deeply within, they only advance and never retreat. This is called the mind of irreversibility. This is the 7 of the 10 stages of never receding or continuous progress. In non-retrogression, perfect unity and constant progress or dwelling of irreversibility. United in body and mind, they easily grow and mature day by day. In this stage, bodhisattvas realize serenity of mind and also achieve unimpeded liberation. In short, the ceaselessly inner struggle on the path of perfect enlightenment and Buddhahood, with full of hardship and obstructions over the course of untold eons, is not an easy task at all. But not because of these difficulties we don't want to start the journey. We, devout Buddhists, should always remember that time flies really fast. The years and months have gone by really fast too. In the same way, people progress from birth to old age and death without being aware of it. So, we should start to enter right away with our own ceaselessly inner struggle, hoping that we can make our lives more peaceful, mindful, and happy in this very life.